All right, but we'll get into my talk. 3 reasons your software team is not aligned. And I am going to specifically talk about software teams and building software today. And that is because building software is a little bit different than other things that the world has built out. And we'll get into that as we go. Now, I am going to go through the 3 reasons. And I'll cover them right up front in case you're not able to stay the whole time. You're not going to leave you hanging on the teaser of 3 major contributors. I will share them early. And then as I talk through them, I'm going to share some juicy stories of teams that I've been on that have had various alignment issues, as well as what you can do about them. And I wanted to paint a little bit of a picture for us. So as I was thinking about different teams, I thought, well, you know what? Your team might be misaligned if, I've got a few examples. You might be misaligned if you've ever muttered, good thing we're not in the same room, or heads would roll. Your team might be misaligned if your boss has 3 number 1 priorities and 7 at 1A. You might be misaligned if 2 of your teammates don't talk to each other anymore. Might be misaligned if the team thinks you're going too fast and the customer thinks you're going way too slow. This one will hurt if it's something you've done. You might be misaligned if your team uses they instead of we, especially about each other. You might be misaligned if the last authentic opinion you heard from your developers was, I'm hungry. And you might be misaligned if your decision-making process on the team looks like this. For those of you who may not be familiar with the meme, it is 3 Spider-Mans pointing at each other. Not the greatest look for leadership of a team. All right, now it's also fun telling these jokes that may or may not be funny and may or may not resonate a little bit for being true, because I know the next time that I make one of those mistakes or that happens to me, my team will be quick to call me out on it. And that's what I appreciate about them. I know a lot of y'all are on the call, so thanks for coming. I do want to get a couple things out of the way right at the beginning as well. We're going to talk about reasons that your team might not be aligned, what you can do about it. I want to highlight what are some things that people sort of implicitly assume. I'm going to bring them out into the open and make sure we're all clear that these aren't the reasons. These are not root causes. They might be symptoms, but they're not the reasons your team's not aligned. Team's not smart enough. Team's not smart enough. That's not the reason that your team is struggling with alignment for 2 underlying factors. One of the underlying factors is that the range of human cognition, really smart people, the people who are not so smart, it's not actually that broad, especially within an industry or discipline like software development. The range of what you're dealing with in terms of individual intelligence or performance there, it's just not that broad. The other reason is that intelligence doesn't really map particularly to team performance at all. In fact, if you look at another discipline that's been studied, something like private equity, you have folks that are really successful in that field. We naively would probably assume these folks they're likely kind of smarter than everybody. They're kind of better than everybody. That's how they got there. Doesn't hold up. It's not true. They're not smarter than other folks. They don't rate above in cognition. In fact, they come in, sort of in the bell curve like you would expect. Where they come in differently is in their risk taking, actually. It's a factor that sort of sets apart for success in private equity. And similarly in software development, the factor that's setting teams apart is not, hey, do they have smart enough people on the team? At best, that's, a symptom, and more realistically, just not related to the alignment issues that you're having. Well, maybe the team's not doing their best. May or may not be true. Again, that is a symptom and not a cause. If people have accepted a job and are showing up to work there, waking up, spending 8 or more hours of their day focused entirely on this business, generally speaking, people aren't doing that to show up and do that real poorly. and don't enjoy living that way. People are generally really showing up to do their best. And then also team not working hard enough. An example I like to think of here is the sport of rowing. Got a team, they're in a boat, paddles in the water. And if you've been out rowing, it's a good amount of work to move over the water. But if that boat is pointed upstream and the team is swimming up against a river, they're going to struggle to make progress. It's going to be extremely hard work. Turn that boat around, point it downriver, team might be able to stop paddling. Certainly will find the flow of paddling much easier and will make much, much more progress. And that doesn't have to do with their progress, does not at all correlate with how hard they are working. In fact, it correlates with other things. So what are those factors? What are we going to look at? Well, I'll tell you right up front, 3 of the reasons. There will be a bonus one a little bit later. 3 of the reasons that we're going to talk about today. If your team does not have good psychological safety, you're going to have problems with alignment. If your team does not have strong decision-making process in place, you're going to struggle with alignment. And if your team is not clear on the mission, you're going to struggle with alignment, right? Some of these are cultural, some of these are more cultural or values driven, some of these are more mission driven, and a little bit more process driven. So we'll move across all of these, and I've got some stories that you'll see range across all of them. We'll start with psychological safety. This is not a touchy-feely topic. This is not everybody feels happy and comfortable or that things are nice. So it's sort of much more, in a way, ruthless than that. Psychological safety is about having the environment on the team to be very open about risks, to be very open about not knowing, to be able to be wrong and then take adjustment from the team, and to do all of that without feeling the need to hide. From the Extreme Programming Explained book, and if you don't have this, I recommend it. Extreme Programming Explained, there's a section in there that mentions when teams don't have this, they can find themselves working under a lie that everyone on the team knows that this is a lie, that there's an expectation somewhere else, that it's not going to line up and be met with reality. And everyone knows it's not in the open, and everyone has to hide to protect themselves. You cannot deny reality. And if you try to have your team deny reality, instead, they will just hide to protect themselves. That only hurts results. We'll link to an article at the end of this about from HBR, the Harvard Business Review, about how Agile doesn't work without psychological safety. And I am taking as my touchstone a little bit that modern software teams need to work in an Agile fashion. The rate of change in the world, the rate of change demanded and needed by our businesses does not line up with other models. And that quick iteration, that quick need to adjust, none of that works if you don't have psychological safety to start. If you're lacking psychological safety, you can imagine these arrows as different team members. It's not only that they might be pointed in different directions, they might be trying to achieve different goals. They're not even aware sometimes how different their directions are, because they're not able to rumble through discomfort to know that they look like this. And if you think about the situation, like someone is going the wrong direction. Some of these are almost opposite. Somebody's going to have to change direction entirely. The good news is people are really flexible and are able to flip around and say, you know what, I was going this way, I'm going to turn around and go that way. Bad news is they can't do that if they don't know what direction they need to go in, or that they're going a different direction. One of the things you can do to discover this is just ask your team, hey, what do you think our big goal is? What are we trying to accomplish? How will we know if we are successful? How will we know in 90 days if we're successful? How will you know if you're 90 days if you're successful? People know the difference between those two. They know what I'm looking for, what I'm aiming for, and what my team is aiming for. or they know that if if they have any idea of what those things are, they'll also be able to tell you, I don't actually know if the team will know when we're successful or not. But the qualitative analysis of those answers, if you put them together, you should see answers that sort of line up alongside each other, similar in some direction or understanding. You might see answers that are wildly different, where everybody on the team is focused on different factors. Everybody on the team is going in a different direction, has a different idea of success. It's one of the tools you can use to get the indicator that your team's currently misaligned. You're not even in alignment with each other. Of course, you have to have at least enough openness to have those conversations, at least privately. To get there, you've got to put people first. And this is one of those areas where software is distinctly unique or different. Software is a leverage game. It's another thing from Extreme Programming Explained. What that means is you don't add one more person to your team and then get one more person's work out of your team. Of course, at a very basic level, that does happen. You add more people, you can get more code to a certain degree, but the relationship's not linear at all. And in particular, we don't care about the code that's added. As developers, that may be hard to hear for those of you who are developers, but as with a PM, like, we don't care about the stories that are written. Those are only a means to the end that we're trying to get to, which is some actual business difference, value delivered to whoever the customer of this product is, value delivered to the business that we get by providing this. And that value delivered can be drastically different, orders of magnitude different even. That's why software is a leverage game. You get it right, you can ship it worldwide. You can potentially impact millions or even billions of people. If we think back to the late 90s, and we had Yahoo was the way people searched the web. And then Google started in a garage with this crazy idea of, hey, there's a way to make search more accessible and effective for the average person. And we're just going to put a single box on the screen. But behind the scenes, we've got this entire complicated mathematical concept and tooling that we're going to have to build to make this work. And we can just do that work. And in doing that work, we're going to all of a sudden have this search engine that is orders of magnitude better. And it takes over the world. We end up with Google today. And a lot of innovations had to happen behind those. One of those was just having enough computing power and servers. At the time, you would pay a lot of money to a high-end company to get, Sun Microsystems or something, get these racks and racks of very expensive, very powerful, very capable servers. And Google also went in with an idea of, hey, what if we buy the really cheap ones that we know are going to burn out? Even the expensive ones are going to fail. What if we just plan for that failure? We'll duct tape them in, Velcro them, we'll make it real easy to swap them in and out. We'll build our software to deal with that hardware failing and being swapped in and out all the time. We'll just operationalize that. And that also allowed Google to scale and go really fast. I don't know, it's something everybody knows, but that's a part of the factor of how Google was able to take over the way they did. So with software, we're looking for leverage. We're looking for breakthrough. And remember, we're talking about psychological safety. We need innovation. We need people's best. This means the relationships matter. We really need not just each individual's best, but we need the team for everybody to be able to push each other, to try different things, to come to a best possible answer. And the team can get to that, but not if it's spending energy staying out of trouble or spending time on code switching, doing anything other than being focused on the business and the opportunities in front of them. So what can you do about this from wherever your place is on the team? Well, we've talked about this tool before, but one of the first things that you need to do is just active listening. Active listening. You need to be tuned in to what your teammates are saying rather than thinking about what you're thinking about. And then you need to follow up with questions to draw things out. We are having a discussion at one point on a project, and we were talking through the details. Oh, we've got this story and then we're going to run that, and see, we're trying to get to this estimate. And the person mentioned just a vague statement of, yeah, I mean, of course we're gonna, we'll do that. I'm sure it'll be fine. It would be easy to move on past that. They didn't say anything specific or substantial. And technically they said everything was going to be fine. That's okay, right? But somebody who's active listening is going to know, wait, you sound uncertain. You sound worried. Can you tell me more about that? And if you write nothing else from today, just write down, can you tell me more about that? Ask that more often. Get to a little bit of a better understanding. So a few years back, we had a customer that we were building their app, or one of the pieces of their app that they used in kind of a studio environment. If you think of it like producing a TV show or something like that, pretty similar kind of thing. And they were in front of thousands of customers, and our software was helping like coordinate that show, if you will. And we had a production bug. Let's say it's something with like the audio. If they got to a certain condition, the audio might cut out in the middle of production. It's obviously a big deal, the way I've described it. And the team at the time certainly understood the bug was a big deal. They spun up, very quickly addressed it, got it fixed out as quick as possible. The follow-up to that bug, though, was a little bit lacking from the customer's point of view. The way we found out about this is parts of the team were describing different things to their managers about what was going on with the project and whether it was in trouble, whether they needed help, even how that bug had gone out. And then also we started hearing reports that the customer was showing up to the meeting and had started to dictate, hey, instead of just writing these unit tests, I need you all to write these different kind of tests. And the team was kind of frustrated and arguing, obviously, the customer's wrong. They don't know about the code. That test wouldn't even have caught this bug. It won't solve their problem. And arguing with each other about the right steps to take. They were really missing a bigger picture of connecting to each other and actively listening to each other, including that product owner. And the signal that I would pull out of that, one of the signals you can pull out of that is when someone starts micromanaging or dictating more details, whether you think they're doing it poorly or well, what it really means is they're not getting something they need. They may not know how to tell you what it is that they need. They're not getting it. They're not getting something. And until you know what that something is, you're answering the wrong questions and going in the wrong direction and trying to explain it. Being technically correct, it's not the best kind of correct. It's actually pretty useless because people don't work from rational first as much as we all like to think we do. You might have the bullet points in front of you. And yes, you're very rational. You're very logical. That's not actually how humans make decisions. It's not how we work. A lot of studies on this. We work from emotions. Actually, the people that I most worry about are those people who think that they're not emotional in their decision making. Being aware of it is a powerful and good thing. Being unaware of it can actually be very dangerous. Those people are convinced that they are more right than everybody else because they're more rational than everybody else. And in reality, we all have different information. We're working from different perspectives and different sides of the case. If you don't stay curious, if you don't stay open, you don't build that sort of honest, psychologically safe environment where you can rumble with the team and learn through it, you don't come out with the best possible answers and the best possible outcomes. So again, what do? Active listening. You've got to model it. You've got to model being open, saying, I don't know, in front of the team. You've got to model yourself, demonstrate what it is you want to see from the team. In order to ask for it, you first have to do it and show it. And I like to remember, again, safety is not about comfort or niceness in the moment. It's not about protecting people from business reality or from truth. Instead, being clear is a part of being kind. Clear is kind. The pace that we move, the demands that we see in our modern businesses, it's not going to slow down. It's not going to relent. It's not going to just get easier. And we need to grapple with that reality together more effectively. The way that we get to a better place is by being really clear with each other. And that is how we can be kind to each other and ultimately establish a better working team. The tension that you feel if you're in a rowboat and you're rowing at a different pace than the people around you, it's very uncomfortable and it's very difficult. But if you start all rowing together, everybody's on the beat, maybe somebody's calling out the beat. It doesn't even matter as much what the beat is as that you're all doing it. You can enter a state of flow and you can really get to where, while you're still working hard, it feels much easier because you're not fighting everything around you. You're in alignment. I think it was Elon Musk who said, like, people are vectors. They have a magnitude and a direction, and you have to add up all those vectors, and that's the outcome you get. So we want to point more in the same direction. So that's psychological safety. You're not going to get very far anywhere if you don't have that either inside the team or outside the team, across leadership and all the way through. It's not enough, though. It's not enough that you have a team willing to rumble and be open with each other. You also have to be able to make decisions really quickly. And this is another place where software is different, in that our ability to like reverse change or correct a decision in software is much better than many other things. For example, if you're building some kind of structure, road, house, something like that, it might be cheap to change plans up until you pour concrete. After that, one day when you start pouring concrete, it gets significantly more expensive. It can go from $0 to $10,000 on a single day in terms of your ability to reverse or change a decision, or more. So there's a lot of pressure around that. Software has a lot less of those moments. Because of that, it's not as important to get the decisions right as it is to make them quickly. And in fact, there's studies around the impact on Agile of moving from 5 hours to make a decision to 1 hour to make a decision. So you need a clear decision-making process where as much of that is pushed to the team as possible. One of the examples I think of here is just helping people move. Have you ever helped somebody move? Ever had somebody need to move and go in and help them out? I moved a lot as a kid, and I actually really enjoy helping people move. I don't know, something just something that I enjoyed. I love helping people. And in particular, you've got to do like heavy lifting, maneuvering furniture. It's awkward, and you're navigating stairs, hallways, corners, and that requires some of the spatial reasoning. Those pieces click together for me. Lifting and moving these heavy things while solving a puzzle, it's kind of my jam. So I love helping out. What I don't love is showing up and trying to guess where I'm going to put the thing. I just want to, does it need to go up the stairs and around the corner? I don't need apologies. I don't want like you're to provide input on whether it goes upstairs or not. I want to get it where it needs to go. That's what I'm good at, but I'm not the owner of the house. The person who's moving, you're the owner of the house. Provide me clear direction. Have you ever seen the owners that are like trying to run back and forth the truck and get the boxes while at the same time you're doing that and going in and out past you? And every time you get to the door, like, where does this thing go? I just want somebody to stay in the house and say, take it upstairs, take it over there, provide that direction. Now, these days I've gotten a little smarter. I stand by the door and provide that direction now if somebody's not doing it. And in fact, I will buy colored tape, label a kitchen, bathroom, throw it on the boxes. If you haven't seen that tape, by the way, this is fantastic. You ever need to move, get this labeled tape. It's bright colors, different colors, and labeled of the room. The first time I had people show up to help move with boxes labeled to what room they went to, the joy on everybody's face was pretty remarkable on how big of an impact that made. So tell your team what success looks like, what the measurables are. Stay there, stay in place, tell them over and over again. We had another project I went on several years back, and this one, I was really excited about this. This company was in the people moving space, and they were in a particular place of it that had long been one of my visions for how the future, how things need to change in the future, right? We all have today, and then we have ideas about where we need to go, and there's a lot happening in the world. And, you know, we focus on different parts of it. I like transportation, getting people around. It's a very fascinating space to me, and I think there's a lot of pieces in play today and changing in the near future around that are pretty exciting. This company is playing in one of those spaces like, oh, I had dreamed of this 10 years ago, and here's a project with a chance for me to go on and run it. So as a team, We built out did our best to build some good psychological safety. And we started going out and building this project. Now, the company was in Silicon Valley at the time. It was a startup. They were just a couple of years in. And as a startup does, trying to move very quickly. And so one of the things they wrote into the contract was that we would travel out every month. Now, we as a team, a few of us were from Atlanta. We weren't that excited about traveling every month out there, especially because while the startup had unexplored spaces and needed to find business success, what we were tasked with building in the next 3 months was really clear. There were existing patterns. It was well documented. We obviously needed to design and work out specific pieces of it, but it wasn't the kind of, by itself in the app space, wasn't the new invention that maybe warrants like putting everybody in a room constantly together. And further, we had November, December coming up with a lot of holidays and travel, people out, existing vacation scheduled before the project, etc. It turned out that to go out every month, the only way we could do that was to go out the last week of November and then immediately come back the first week of December. As the developers on the project at the time, we both had families, kind of a hard ask around that season. We tried to instead provide other options to not go out there both those weeks, essentially. Just that. It's in the contract, you got to do it's in the contract, sure, but where's the focus on this project? What do we really need to accomplish? One of our arguments was we'd actually be able to get more progress towards the project's goals by using that time instead, working remotely. And quite frankly, like the leadership of the project wasn't having it. It's in the contract, you've got to do it, come out here. We show up out there for that first week, and there wasn't even a table for us. We actually ended up working from the hotel for that week. And that was one specific example, but there were a lot of technical decisions in how are we going to build this? How is this going to be architected? Where we as a team felt that we had the expertise to apply to the problem, we would bounce it off of each other. We rumbled quite heavily with the project manager, with the engineers, with the designers, and coming to good decisions. We'd make a decision, and then the director over it would come in, ask a couple questions, and redirect things. There wasn't a clear boundary on what leadership was and wasn't deciding. And it quickly became clear we didn't know what we could and couldn't decide. And in fact, it started to seem like we couldn't decide much of anything. And that significantly handicapped the team and the processes. In fact, in that team, what should have been a dream project, very vision aligned, and with good people, even though we certainly had our share of like stress and back and forth on the team, instead turned into all of the most capable people on the project were the first to try and get off of it. And that team fell apart very quickly, feeling that they were not going to be able to be successful. We were lacking that rapid decision-making ability in Agile and the ability to make mistakes and then learn from them. That feedback loop of learning, we were lacking enabled roles and responsibilities, specifically where accountability and authority were aligned. If you push accountability down to a team, but do not push authority down to make the change, any person you put in that position is going to struggle because the authority and the accountability need to be lined up. So documenting clear roles and accountabilities help with this. Having the psychological safety to be able to push back even to a senior leader, very important. There has to be that back and forth. There's going to be misses. That discussion needs to happen. But if you can get roles and responsibilities, you can at least get the team to all know where they're going and align on the same direction when they know who is making what decisions. So that is psychological safety, as well as decision-making and process. The third big factor that can lead to a team not being aligned, being misaligned, is missional, is not actually knowing what the target is, not knowing what the big number is, what the big success is. And this story is going to kind of cover multiple of these failures in once. So I'm going to tell the story and let you listen across all three of these factors and see what failures you can pick out here. We had another new startup, this one in Atlanta, and this was going to be a two-sided network where you've got operators on one side who can help fix things, and then you have this business that needs a whole group of businesses that often need help getting things fixed. It's a long-running problem. Our product owner was coming out of the industry that needed that help and had direct familiarity with the depth of the problem and how challenging it was. We need these things fixed really fast. The way we do it currently is, we build a run book, we build a little call book of all of our, most key repair people, and then we have to try and keep that in front of our workers. And I want an app that instead I can just sell to all of these businesses, and they can get in touch with the operators, and the operators will want to be on it because they'll get in there to get business. They'll be able to, fix things closer to them more often. They'll be able to drive more business. So we're building this product out. And like a startup, there's back and forth, quick iteration, trying to ship things out, trying to figure out minimum valuable product, all that kind of thing. And one of the things we have to do is accept payment, accept credit cards, right? You've got to be able to take payment to get people bought into the system. So we're going to, like a lot of platforms, take a slice across the top of every transaction. That means those have to flow through the app. So our engineering team, in particular our backend engineer, takes a look at the problem, and we come back with a recommendation. Those of you who've worked in the space will understand we were quick to recommend Stripe. Stripe, at that time, still somewhat early, but had already demonstrated significant success. We'd already used it well on another project. We knew it could immediately suit the need and allow us to get to market faster, get it in front of users faster, and find out what we believe the startup most needed to find out, which is, can you build that multi-sided network? Can you sell it to the users? Now, when we were talking to our product owner about this, they suggested this worldwide sort of banking company instead. We weren't familiar with them. So of course we said, sure, we'll look into that as well. As an engineering team, we can go take that on and try and figure out what you need. So we do a little experimentation, a little bit of talking to them, and update our product owner every week. And pretty quickly, within a couple of weeks, we came back with, both immediately and later on, this does not look like the solution. This company is very slow to respond. We can't even get access to the APIs. It's not even clear if they have APIs. We can't even talk to a technical person. It's taken us multiple weeks to try and get on the phone, yada, yada. Here's our reasoning around this. And the product owner said, okay, well, I understand those points, but I want you to keep trying there. I want you to go further with this and investigate this one. And it got to the point where both the engineer and the product owner are getting really frustrated with each other. And in fact, psychological safety starting to break down simply because their relationship was breaking down. And in fact, I got brought in and or took over and replaced that engineer in all the discussions after discussion went badly, and said, hold on, let's stop what we're doing. Let's do a different thing. Something's not working. We're missing something. And honestly, the signs of this are pretty obvious. You probably know them on your own project. When people start repeating the same point to each other and then feeling like they hear the same point back and they're repeating the same point again, whenever you get trapped in that loop, you're not hearing each other, you're missing something. And one of the pieces of this is the other person's probably not telling you what you're going to miss, and further, probably isn't going to tell you what you're going to miss, not without some help. Because if they were going to, they would have already cleared up what this misunderstanding is. There's clearly a mismatch, right? There's clearly that misalignment. And when we see that misalignment, we've got to stop and we've got to figure out, what are we missing on? And so I asked some more questions. This is, again, I don't want to make this too easy because it's very hard. There's a lot of nuance and art to this. And at the same time, stopping and asking more questions. Wait, why is that important to you? What do you need out of that? Can you tell me more about that? We came to understand one, that our product owner had previous experience taking credit cards and believed that that validated the choice that they were making about which provider to use to handle that business. And one of the things that we realized is they didn't understand the difference in their previous business, where they were operating a business and like taking a card directly from a consumer, didn't understand like the different parameters of that versus the software that they were deploying and had to be approved on app stores. And then the other piece that was a really big breakthrough was at one point they mentioned, yeah, but this company also has like sales and marketing, and they're going to represent our product elsewhere. Now, I think they had told our backend engineer that before, if you're an engineer, you might hear product and marketing and the words might fly over your head. It sounds like somebody else's problem. That's a space I chose not to go into. I do computer stuff. It's critically important. At the time, this was pretty early on in my own career. Actually brought that back to my leadership team and said, they said this one weird thing and it seemed important. And I don't quite know why. It seemed, I don't feel like that invalidates our expertise, but it seems really important. And then the moment I shared it with my leadership team, their eyes lit up. Well, hold on. There's a whole business context at play here, right? There are some missional elements this company needs to fulfill in order to get their platform deployed. They actually have far bigger problems than the technical problems, right? We are one cog in the wheel. We're one cog in that whole engine. Getting the business stood up is actually significantly about sales and marketing, particularly in this company's case. No wonder that carries so much weight. And so we need to go back and very clearly say, here are the risks and trade-offs, and here are the options, and which one would you like us to pursue, and give them that choice. And frankly, they might need to take this risk of failure, even if we think it's very likely to fail. They might need to take that as a startup. Taking on those failure or those risks and risking failure is a part of business. So eventually, right after that conversation, we did in fact go back and do that. And then we pursued further on this provider that we didn't think was going to work out. One of the weirdest moments of my career being on the call when they said to us, well, we don't know if you're running guns or drugs. And at the time, for our company and our very sort of careful rule following engineers, that was a bit of a, excuse me, what? But it does make sense in this bank's context, who is trying to adhere to global banking regulations, and really it was a good indication of the mismatch. We learned some things about communicating better with the product owner, but primarily in listening. We could have gotten to this point much earlier in understanding it. And if you want the outcome there, I won't hold the secret for you. We did actually spend a few months trying to get them fully qualified to process credit cards with this bank. The bank continually was not able to provide anything near what they needed. In fact, wasn't providing a service. And they paid a lot of money to still end up at the same point and go back and end up implementing Stripe. So while we may have been right in that context, that doesn't mean we were right about the risk that needed to be taken there. And we needed to take that risk for them. We could have probably gotten them to that failure faster and cheaper, with a little bit more collaboration early on. Although we did communicate all along the way as well there. So sometimes you make the choices and you live with them. I'm just checking in for questions. Y'all are a quiet bunch today. All right. Sometimes as a team, you're taking a risk for the business. You might think it won't pay off. The business might need somebody to take that risk. They might be okay taking that risk. You might say, yeah, might fail. We understand you think it's going to fail. Let's give it a really good try so we can know for sure. We're going to learn out of this. And that's another thing there, is valuing the learning that comes out. Getting a team in line with the company's direction requires repetition. The mission needs to be clearly repeated and repeated and repeated. In fact, people need to hear what you're trying to accomplish 7 times or more before it really sinks in. And need to also have that discussion, that openness to go back and forth and make sure the comprehension is there and not just the words. One other point along this, a thing that is kind of fun about software and in general in product development, Your software structure will tend to match your company structure. Software can become a visual representation of how information flows through your company. And if you think about it, it has to do with who talks to who makes what decisions, where are the collaboration boundaries in your company. You have to have things in place, boundaries in place, and ways to cross those boundaries in place for your company. Your software is going to have essentially the same challenges. The experts and the controllers over particular information, that flows right into the software. And so if your business is not aligned with your business structure, you run the risk of building software that is also not aligned with the actual need of your business. It's really important to make sure that you get the pieces into place more in the right place and that you're willing to move them around so the software can move around as well. In order to that, again, you've got to do learning. And this is where I know I said at the beginning about, being smart isn't the factor, and that's true, but expertise can matter. You just have to be a little bit careful with this one. So not having the right expertise on the team absolutely can be a limiting factor or a contributor to the team being misaligned. But the expertise is not necessarily as straightforward as it seems from the outside of, oh, clearly I need somebody familiar with my industry or somebody who's built this particular API or process before. Rather, it has to do somebody having the right problem solving skills, having access to the right information sources. And so that's where the details matter, and you need to get into those details. Also, bringing in somebody who's solved the problem before means you're going to get the solution from before. That can be fine. That can also compete with creativity if you need startup type innovation, or if you're looking for that software leverage to move the industry forward. But that's for another talk. The good news about expertise is this is something you can directly affect on your team. You can invest, making space and time, prioritize building that expertise. If you think about the military, I was in the Navy a long time ago. We'll save those more stories from that for another time. But the military really trains nearly constantly. You can't be ready if you're not practicing what you need to do. That's an unusual case where the investment costs can be really high because the risk costs are really high. But that readiness is something that teams can be supported in by specifically providing training for where you're going. There's a really good book about this, The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly. Talks about a learning organization, and he lays out how structural thinking supports building an organization that learns and adapts. And so I highly, highly recommend Fifth Discipline for a read if you have not already taken a look at it. And then I'll also mention just one other tool. I gave a webinar a few months back on communication, the 3 C's of communication. Clarity is kind of what we've talked about a lot today, but there is also starting with connection and then making sure to provide context. So connection, clarity, and context are your 3C toolbox for improving your communication. And every one of us can work on improving that. And by doing it ourselves can actually help those around us also improve. So we talked about 3 reasons plus a bonus one today. We talked about psychological safety, having clear decision-making processes, and then having a clarity of mission that we repeat. And we also talked about expertise and providing learning to help our team stay aligned. Along the way, we shared some stories. I'm seeing the Amazon links did not work. Joe, we can get that sorted out with you after. Is anybody else having a problem with the links not working? Somebody let me know in chat if the links are working or not for the 5th discipline. And oh, yep, looks like the links did not work. If one of you wants to take a crack at it, it's the Extreme Programming Explained book and the 5th discipline book as well. All right, we'll see if we can get those corrected here in just a second. Oh, interesting. Thanks, Tim or Timothy. All right, and I'll go to Q&A in a second, but just thank you all very much for coming. Appreciate your time today. You can reach me at step.christopher@integral.io.